Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. Upanishads are ancient Indian wisdoms. They reveal to us what was there in ancient India, how it has been passed from one generation to another generation, step by step, the value of that wisdom and the application of that wisdom in the modern days, whether that application is relevant or irrelevant. So there are so many questions to be answered. But we are not in a position to deny the ancient wisdom. The ancient wisdom should be considered. It should be commented and recommented. It should be tried in the given context. When we see these things, Kenopanishad becomes one of them. Kenopanishad is one of the principal Upanishads. Kenopanishad is embedded in the Talwakar Brahmana of Samaveda. Of course, this Kenopanishad has its own importance. In the history of ancient Indian wisdom. Kenopanishad is also called as Kenopanishad. It is also called as Talwakar Brahman Upanishad or Talwakar Upanishad, etc., etc. Of course, Kena is a Sanskrit word. Kena means by whom, by whose, or by whom is this world created? Who is the creator of this world? Who has shaped this world? Where has it been shaped? Etc., etc. Kenopanishad tried to answer these questions in its own way in the form of dialogue between preceptor and the disciple. Of course, that preceptor and disciple tradition is very important in Upanishads. Even today, that tradition has been continued in one way or another way in modern world. That tradition is continued in the form of question and answers. What we listen, what we hear, it should be questioned. And the question should be tried to be answered. The student should question, the teacher should answer. That is in the form of question and answer. The tradition has been there even today. Of course, In addition to this tradition, we have made used some modern equipments which are very helpful to accumulate knowledge, to spread knowledge, to question knowledge, to think right and wrong of the knowledge, and etc. etc. From this point of view, that the Kenopanishad is become one of the important Upanishads. Of course, that Kenopanishad might have been composed in the middle of the first millennium BC. It might have been composed after Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, etc., etc., but before Katha Manduka Upanishads. It might have been composed before Buddhist and Jain canons. Of course, it was composed in the language of Sanskrit. It is doubtful at that time Sanskrit is already in the written form or not. Only the script history of a language can answer this question. But unfortunately, that script history of any language is not yet properly studied in the modern days. Because in ancient time, the communication was through dialogue. It was in the form of poetry or short sentences. It used the language which was very easy to remember, which was very easy to pass from one generation to another generation through mouth. So, at that time, that the Kenopanishad was formed, was shaped in the Samaveda period. Of course, in those days, castes were not yet established as we have understood them today. That Brahman doesn't mean a caste. It is a kind of understanding the world. But as the time goes on and on, that Brahman becomes a caste, a dominant caste, even it is in a minority. That is a different history. But in olden days, when these Upanishads were shaped, formed, there were no question of caste. Caste in the present context. Of course, there were matas. Now we say these matas are equivalent to religion. Whether religion is a proper word or not, that would be different. Here I am not going to discuss it. But when Kenopanishad was composed in the middle of first millennium BC, at that time it was in the form of dialogue. It was in the form of question and answer between a preceptor and student, between a preceptor and a disciples. That is why we cannot say who composed Kenopanishad. It happens in almost all cases of Upanishads. In some Upanishads, some rishis may be important, but that doesn't mean they themselves composed Upanishad, because it is a collective activity, it is a team activity, it is a Guru Shishya Parampara, that is the preceptor and disciple tradition. Of course, in order to know something, there must be a preceptor. In order to say something to someone, there should be a disciple who wants to have the knowledge of different types. Kenopanishad divides knowledge into two parts at that time. One was empirical knowledge, another was conceptual knowledge. Empirical knowledge is subject and object based. It can be understood, it can be known, it can be explained to others, it can be described to others, it can be narrated to others, it can be answered so many questions in so many ways. That means a common man can understand this empirical knowledge. A common man or above common man can understand this empirical knowledge. But when we come to the conceptual knowledge, it is very difficult to explain it to others, because it requires a kind of discipline, a kind of cultivation of mind and matter. It can be realized, but it is very difficult to say it to others sometimes. Others can try to realize it, but it is very difficult to realize, but it is realizable, it is knowable. So, Kenopanishad has made this division of empirical knowledge and conceptual knowledge. In empirical knowledge is a subject and object based, and conceptual knowledge is mainly subject based, is a spiritual reality. Because sometimes someone realizes something, others may not have realized that thing. But you cannot say what one has realized is nothing, because others have not realized. So here realization is an individual one, here realization is a subjective one. Here subjectivity plays a prominent role in conceptual knowledge. There are so many concepts, so many ideas are floated. Those ideas, those concepts are not presented at the time, but in the coming years, in the future, they may be a reality. What Einstein, what Newton, what Bhaskara, what Ramanujacharya realized once upon a time was not understood at that time, but now the time has come to understand them. Now we can understand Einstein, we can understand Newton, we can understand Ramanujacharya, we can understand Ramanujam, we can understand Bhaskaracharya, and etc. etc. Because that knowledge has been realized, that knowledge has been materialized. What was once conceptualized has been materialized now. That means this conceptualized knowledge takes some time to be understood. It takes some time to be realized. So, but that conceptual knowledge should not be denied. As it is noble, as it is realizable, it should have its own place in the history of conceptual knowledge, in the history of philosophy and hypothesis. So, that conceptual knowledge plays a prominent role in the atmosphere of knowledge. So, that Kenopanishad tries to conceptualize knowledge in the form of Atma and Brahma. Atma means self, Brahma oneself. Brahma doesn't refer to any god. It is a kind of understanding at that time. It is a kind of realization at that time. But as the time goes on, Brahma becomes a god, etc., etc. That would be a different matter. But at that time, it is a kind of conceptual knowledge. So, by realizing Atma and Brahma, Kenopanishad tries to know who has created this world, who has shaped this world. Because Kenopanishad tells something about the nature of man, that it tries to understand the nature of man through Atma and Brahma. And Atma is there in man, Brahma is there in man, but man has not realized that Atma and Brahma. If he realizes that Atma and Brahma, he can come to know the nature of man, he can come to know the nature of this world, he can come to know the nature of space, and etc., etc. So that is why realizing that Atma and Brahma, that is the self and oneself, is very important. That Kenopanishad is in three parts. In the first part, it has 13 verses. In the second part, it has 15 verses. In the third part, it has 9 verses, I think. But these three parts have been divided into 4 kandas, that is the 4 sections, in order to understand. In the first section, 13 verses are there. In the second section, 15 verses are there. In the third section, there are 9 verses. And in the fourth section, that is epilogue, 6 paragraphs. That is, in the first and second section, there are verses. In the third and fourth section, there are paragraphs. That means Kenopanishad bridged the gap between the prose and poetry. Till that time, poetry played a dominant role, but Kenopanishad tried to bridge a gap between prose and poetry. So, it is the combination of poetry and prose, it is a combination of verse and paragraph. So, there we come to know how the prose is emerged in the history of human literature. It may be in any language, whatever form of language. There we come to know the appearance of prose. That too in the middle of the first millennium BC. So, in the first and second sections, Kenopanishad tries to say something about Atma and Brahma, something about the nature of man, the nature of universe, the nature of world, the nature of space, the nature of etc., etc. In order to know that Atma and Brahma is very important, in order to know that self and knowing oneself is very important. That Atma and Brahma is used not in the sense of God, but they are the nature of the nature. They are the forces of nature. Of course, these forces of nature leads to the development of other types of philosophies in Indian philosophical world afterwards. There are so many theories are built up, especially so many darshanas like Sankhya, Purvamimamsa, Uttaramimamsa, etc., etc. Kenopanishad tries to understand the nature of spiritual reality in the third and fourth section of it. Here, one should try to realize the spiritual world, and if he realizes the spiritual world, he could have the bliss, he could have ananda, and in that ananda, he could get whatever he could not get in reality. So, Kenopanishad tries in its own ways to understand this world in its own way. Of course, Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya commented on Kenopanishad as they commented on other Upanishads, because they are the first persons to comment on these Upanishads. Especially Shankaracharya commented on 10 of the Upanishads. Of course, Madhvacharya also did it. Shankaracharya commented from the point of view of non-dualism, and Madhvacharya commented it from the point of view of dualism. Both of them lived in a different period, in a different century. Their views are different, but those views are considerable. Shankaracharya commented on Kenopanishad in two ways. One way is Padabhyasa and another way is Vakyabhyasa. But Padabhyasa commentary is famous, and Vakyabhyasa commentary is said to be commented by Shankaracharya, but some critics, some Upanishadkars disputed it. Vakyabhyasa might not be commented by Shankaracharya, etc., etc. Let them to study and research regarding that part. But anyhow, the commentary made by Shankaracharya is very considerable, especially the Padabhyasa. He did it in the 9th century of that is AD, Common Era. So, there in the third section, there is a fable. That fable is very attractive and very fashionable, and it reveals how the world might have been formed. That is, it is a kind of allegory. That is, there is a Brahma and Uma and 3 gods. Of course, it is a fable. In the form of a fable, it commented how gods and demons fought against each other and how gods got victory. Of course, It is an allegory of good and evil. How good gets gets victory over evil. But then how gods felt that they were responsible for the victory. But they did not know the importance of Brahma. So Brahma wanted to teach a lesson to them. So he created a thing which gods could not understand. So God sent first Agni to Brahma to know who is that or what is that. Brahma asked Agni, what is his power? Agni says his power is fire. He can burn anything. So Brahma gives a straw and he told him to burn it. But Agni can't burn it. Then Agni goes back and tells gods he cannot know what is that thing. Then Vayu comes. Brahma asked the same question, what is his power? His power is Vayu. He can spread everywhere in the space immediately. He can displace it and replace it. He can carry it, the thing, to any place. And Brahma gives a straw of grass. He tells him to carry it. Vayu tries, but he cannot. He cannot even shake that straw of grass. So he felt defeated and goes to gods and he tells them he doesn't know what is that. Then lastly, that Indra comes. He tries to answer the question asked him. He is the power of light. That power of light is everywhere. He can do it. But of course, when Indra comes there is not Brahma, there is a Uma, there is a goddess. And that goddess tells, so there is nothing. You are not cause for the victory. That Brahma, that noble thing is cause for victory. And you cannot see it. Like that it goes on and on. So of course it is a fable. It says how good gets success over the evil. Even today we can see it. There is always a fight between good and evil. At the end, good gets success and evil defeats. That is the poetic justice. That poetic justice can be seen in Kenopanishad. Of course, it is shown through the spiritual reality. So, that Shankaracharya in his Padabhyasa equates Atma and Brahma to Ishvara and Parameshvara. You can call it by whatever name you want, but the nature of it is same. So that is what Kenopanishad tries to understand, tries to realize. So in this way, Kenopanishad tries to realize the world in a different form, in a different way. So by this, it adds to the ancient wisdom of Indian philosophy, ancient wisdom of Indian phenomena. Indian phenomena is very important, We have got different phenomena, but Indian phenomena has its own uniqueness. It has its own characteristics. And that phenomena can be seen in Kenopanishad, that is in Kena Upanishad. That is what we come to know from Kena Upanishad. Of course, that what is there, that curiosity is there to understand, that consciousness is there to understand, that consciousness is a Chaitanya. Of course, that Chaitanya is there in the mind and body, that Chaitanya is there in man and matter, that Chaitanya is there everywhere, and we try to understand that Chaitanya is very important. That's why whenever we chant some slokas, we say, Chaitanyam Shashvatam Shantam Vyomatitam Vyomatitam Nadabindu Kalatitam Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. That Guru is a Chaitanya, that Guru and Shishya tries to realize this world. Guru tells disciple what he has realized, and by that he tries to add something to the knowledge of the disciple, something to the world knowledge. By that they try to beautify this world. That beautifying world is very important, To be beautified, to live in this world is very important. So, in order to live, we have to beautify. It has to be beautified in order to be lived. That is what we have to understand in this context. So, that consciousness, that Chaitanya is very important, and that Chaitanya must be there. See, that is why that Chaitanya is eternal, that consciousness is eternal. So that is why we say, thy yourself, know thyself, realize oneself, realize self. That is the content of Kenopanishad. I hope I have brought home to you what is there in Kenopanishad. See you in the next episode, and Namaskar.